Welcome back to my channel, IMDb 8 Recap. Today, I'm going to explain a psychological thriller movie, Watcher, released in the year 2022. The movie is about Julia, a girl who shifts to Romania with her husband, but things change so quickly in their relationship that her husband does not believe her until she becomes a victim of a deadly serial killer. But before we begin to tell you the story, please subscribe to our channel, as we really need your support to grow and continue making these amazing recaps. The movie opens in a cab with a young couple named Julia and Francis. When the driver compliments Julia, but Francis discourages him, we come to know that the couple is shifting to Romania, and Julia does not understand Romanian language. Eventually, they arrive at their destination, and Julia feels strange after reaching there. Francis deals with the landlady, and Julia assures her that she likes the rented apartment a lot. After the landlady leaves, Francis and Julia make love to refresh themselves. Julia cannot sleep at night, and she gets out of bed and notices a man staring right at her through his window. Suddenly, Francis wakes up and calls her back to sleep with him. Despite being asked, Francis leaves Julia while sleeping and texts her to inform her that she was looking too cute while sleeping, so he did not wake her up. Julia then starts learning the Romanian language using Google, and after that, she visits a restaurant to have a coffee, where the waiter appreciates her for learning the Romanian language. Julia visits many historical places and captures pictures. She buys a toy on her way back home. Julia gets ready for Francis and keeps waiting for him at the dinner table when she comes near the window and spots the same man looking at her. This very moment Francis arrives and, when questioned, Julia lies to him about standing near the window to see people. After having dinner, Julia and Francis leave for an outing, and they encounter police investigating a murder near their apartment. The following day, Julia watches the news about the incident last night and requests Francis to translate it for her, and he tells her that the girl in the news has been murdered. On being asked how she has been killed, Francis lies to her. Francis then informs her that his friend Nikolai and his wife will visit them at 7 p.m. and starts talking to her about his boss, Simeon. Francis senses that Julia is distracted, and when asked, she tells him that he has observed a man constantly noticing her through his window, and she observes him at night because he is invisible during the day. In the next scene we see Nikolai and his wife having dinner with Francis and Julia, but Julia finds it strange when they keep talking to each other in the Romanian language. Nikolai feels this and tries to involve Julia in their conversation and mentions the news of the girl's murder in their street. Julia acknowledges that the girl was found beheaded in her apartment, and her death is connected to a serial killer called Spider, who has committed his fourth murder. Julia questions Francis about not telling her anything about this, but he assures her that the news didn't mention how she was killed. Francis and his friends again start using the Romanian language, so Julia gets up from there and leaves to throw the junk outside. On her way down the stairs, Julia spots a neighbor girl kissing her boyfriend, and the girl also spots her while looking at them. After the girl's boyfriend leaves, the girl introduces herself as Irina and invites Julia to her apartment, but she denies it, stating that she will visit her soon. The next day, Julia searches for the murdered girl and comes across a video of another surviving victim of Spider, who tells the story of how Spider attacked her and how she used to feel someone was always behind her before being attacked. Julia gets scared after listening to her story, and her words keep repeating in her mind, due to which she gets scared of a man passing by her. Julia enters a cinema to watch a movie, but soon she leaves after a man sits behind her. Julia notices the man's outlook on her way out and then enters a supermarket. She controls herself from buying cigarettes and notices the same man keeping an eye on her while shopping. Julia gets afraid of him and hides in the storeroom, where a staff member spots her and guides her to leave. Later that day, Julia informs Francis about her experience of being chased by a mysterious man at the supermarket. Still, Francis does not pay any attention to it and informs her that he is here to protect her. When Francis tries to kiss Julia, she pushes him back, which makes Francis realize the sensitivity of the situation, and he suggests visiting the store. Francis and Julia meet the same employee who guided Julia out of the store and convinced him to show them the CCTV footage of the day when Julia was there. Julia spots the mysterious man and tells Francis about him, but he thinks the man is staring at her because she kept gazing at him first. Julia does not say anything in reply and captures the mysterious man's picture from the footage. After that, Francis leaves for the office after informing Julia that he may return late due to his meeting. Julia is alone when she gets frightened after listening to a knock at her door. Upon checking, she finds an old lady at her doorstep who keeps talking to her in the Romanian language, which she cannot understand. Luckily, Irina arrives and explains that the old lady is looking for her cat. Irina then invites Julia to her apartment, and they share drinks and have a little chat when Irina's ex-boyfriend knocks on her door and leaves after cursing her for not allowing him inside. After he leaves, Irina explains to Julia that he is a sweet guy, but if he ever crosses his limits, she has a gun to deal with him, and she asks her to open the drawer and look at the gun. After spending some time with Irina, Julia returns to her apartment and encourages herself to wave at the mysterious man standing and staring at her through the window. Julia waves at him, and he replies by waving back, which really scares her to the core. Francis returns from the office, and Julia discloses the incident of the mysterious man waving back at her and requests Francis to call the cops. Officer Ruba arrives and notes Julia's statement about the mysterious man and finds it disrespectful to go and ask the man to stay away from the window. Julia shows Officer Ruba the mysterious man's picture and persuades him to visit him. Francis agrees to accompany Officer Ruba, and they leave to find out whether the same man is disturbing Julia. Julia keeps waiting, and when Francis returns, he tries to make her understand that everything is in her brain. Julia begs him not to rationalize the situation and to believe her, but Francis does not listen to her. The next day, Julia spots the mysterious man again and follows him to a club named Museum. Eventually, she learns that the man works at the club as a janitor, and the moment he tries to look at her, Julia hides and accidentally encounters Irina there, who works as a dancer. Julia explains everything to her and asks about the man working as a janitor, but she informs her that she does not know anything. Julia asks her to be careful, for which Irina thanks her. Julia returns home and falls asleep due to tiredness, but she suddenly wakes up after dreaming about the mysterious man killing her using Spider's method. Julia wakes and gets relaxed after realizing that she is fine, but then she listens to some noises coming from Irina's room. Julia panics and rushes to save Irina, but her door is locked, due to which everyone, including the landlady, gathers around after listening to Julia calling for help. Julia manages to get the door opened by the landlady and gets ashamed after learning that it is the old lady's cat making the noise. Julia does not believe this and looks suspiciously at the closet, but she has to leave without even checking it. The landlady complains to Francis about Julia, and he apologizes to her on Julia's behalf while she keeps listening to their conversation. After that, Francis apologizes to Julia for being busy with his work, and she replies to him sarcastically that she has always wished to live such a life. Francis tells her he will have to go to work for a few hours and invites her to join a party with him in the evening. When Julia is alone at home, she contacts Irina's club to investigate her, but they inform her that she has not visited the club for a few days. Julia gets distracted by Irina's ex-boyfriend knocking at her door, and she approaches him to get her number, but Irina does not pick up her call. Christian is about to leave when Julia asks him for a favor and leads him to the mysterious man's house to learn what is wrong with him. On their way, Julia informs Christian about the man and everything she has gone through. Christian knocks at the door, but no one comes out, and he leaves, cursing at the man. Christian leaves after requesting Julia to inform Irina about him, and after he leaves, Julia knocks at the door one more time and finds an old man in front of her. Julia gets embarrassed and leaves, but when she is descending using the lift, she is thrilled to see the mysterious man inside the same building. Julia returns home in a fit of fear, and Francis questions her about what happened to her, but Julia does not tell him anything. Francis informs her to calm down as the spider has been caught, but suddenly they listen to a knock at their door. Upon checking, Francis finds Officer Ruba with the mysterious man and introduces him as Mr. Weber. Officer then reveals that Weber has complained about Julia for harassing him and constantly staring at his father through the window. Officer then asks them to solve their misunderstanding and end everything while suggesting them to shake hands. Weber agrees to him and shakes hands with Julia, after which they leave. Following that, the couple is at the party, and Francis calls Julia to introduce her to his boss, Simeon, and his wife. After a short introduction, Simeon's wife questions Julia about the neighbor bothering her. Julia gets confused after listening to this, and Francis jokes about Julia along with Simeon, his wife, and Nikolai in the Romanian language, thinking Julia will not get it. Unfortunately, Julia understands his joke and leaves the party angrily. Francis tries to persuade her not to leave, but she does not listen to him after he tells her that she is living in a fantasy that he cannot take anymore. Julia gets sad and leaves crying. She takes a train back to her apartment but gets agitated after finding Weber inside the train. After a while, the train stops, and Weber comes closer to Julia to inform her that the train may be blocked due to a dog, but it will start soon. When Julia questions him about the reason for following her, Weber explains that he has a sad hobby of observing people through his window, but no one except her noticed him before. He informs her that he used to think it was normal until she sent her husband with cops and accompanied a man to his house who cursed at his father. Weber states that he deserves an apology, and Julia says sorry to him while getting afraid of him after looking at his bag. After that, Julia leaves the train and returns home. She starts packing her stuff, but then the sound of a song from Irina's house draws her attention. Julia enters Irina's house while listening to the song, and eventually, she is taken aback after discovering the headless corpse of Irina lying on a chair. Suddenly, Weber attacks her and knocks her out. Julia regains consciousness and attempts to yell, but Weber warns her that Irina tried to scream but ended up dead. Weber then tells her that she was about to catch her with Irina the moment she looked at the closet when she visited earlier. Subsequently, Julia tries to scream after listening to Francis's voice, but Weber cuts her jugular vein so that Julia cannot make any noise. Julia starts moving toward Irina's drawer with the gun, but she fails to approach it. Weber lies next to her and keeps looking at her while she is dying. Weber gets up, thinking Julia has passed away, and spots a little girl staring at him. Weber washes his hands and decides to approach the girl. At the same time, Francis contacts Julia and hears her phone ringtone coming from the other side of the wall. Francis comes out of his apartment and is shocked to see Weber at the door. Francis gets a strange feeling, and when he decides to attack Weber, Julia, who is still alive, shoots him twice. Francis is stunned after looking at Julia holding a gun in her hand and bleeding from the neck, and the movie ends here. Overall, Watcher is a great movie to watch with an amazing storyline, so make sure to check it out. To watch many more exciting recaps like this, don't forget to subscribe, as that's the only way we can keep making these fantastic recaps, and like this video. Let us know in the comments section about your next favorite movie that you would like us to recap. Thanks again for watching and stay safe and healthy.